Yeah, thank you very much, Radhika. And yeah, thank you very much, Julie, for the wonderful speech. And thank you for the organizer, I mean, for this very timely, I would say, necessary event, and it gave me the opportunity. I think it's very timely and necessary and important on multiple fronts, especially when the world is facing grave challenges of war and peace, and some Western politicians obviously trying to distort and rewrite history. First, I mean, just 3 days ago, September 18th marked the 94th anniversary of this September 18th incident known in China, also known as the Moknan incident, when the Imperial Japanese Guangdong Army launched a full-scale invasion of Northeast China and later established a puppet government there. So it was also the beginning of China's 14 years against the Japanese aggression, which of course ended in 1945 with the surrender of Imperial Japan. And second, this year marked the 80th anniversary of the end of the World War II, or the World Anti-Fascist War. And the Chinese people's resistance against the Japanese aggression has a great significance, not only for just for China and for Asia, but for the world. I mean, in the ultimate defeat of fascists in Japan, in Germany, and in Italy. And the Chinese were a major resistance force fighting Japanese aggressors in the East battlefields. I mean, just in 1945, some 1.28 million Japanese soldiers surrendered in China at the end of the war. At the same time, more than 35 million Chinese people lost their lives under the brutal Japanese aggression and occupation in China in that 14 years. I mean, imagine if there was no Chinese people's resistance against the Japanese fascists. The Imperial Japanese Army would probably have more soldiers sent to put pressure on the then Soviet Union, the Red Army, and making situation much more worse in Europe by aligning more strongly with Nazi Germany. And the atrocity committed by the Japanese Imperial Army against the Chinese people were appalling. I'm now actually in Wuxi. It's halfway from between my home city Shanghai and Nanjing, and so obviously everyone here heard of this Nanjing massacre. About 300,000 Chinese people were slaughtered by the Japanese Imperial Army in the matter of just a few weeks. And fourth, we need to, and we should remember and talk about the history today. Why? Because more than 80 years later, many politicians in Japan still refuse to acknowledge that atrocity in Nanjing happened, or in that magnitude. And Japanese school textbooks greatly played down and whitewashed that part of history. So not many people know the exact, what happened then. So this is, we also have Japanese politicians paying tribute often to this Yasukuni Shrine, which honors the World War II Class A war criminals. So it's really, for Chinese, it's really putting salt on the wound of the Chinese people. You know, it's like what would happen when Germans pay homage to Adolf Hitler today. It would be outrage in Europe and in the Western world. But you don't hear that outrage expressed by Western politicians much when Japanese politicians go to Yasukuni Shrine. Of course, I would say Germany has done a much better job than Japan in facing its and confessing its World War II atrocities. Unlike some Japanese politicians, even when they apologize, it's always half-hearted. It's never they never have a sincerely apologize for the war crimes during the Second World War. And in Europe, we have the top EU diplomat. I just left Europe last month. We have the EU top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, questioning any role played by China and the Soviet Union during the Second World War. It is a great insult to the sacrifice made by the Chinese people in the 14 years of resistance against the Japanese aggression, and it's an insult to the Soviet Red Army, which liberated much of Europe from Nazi Germany. I still remember, when they commemorate sort of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. They didn't invite Russia. They don't want to mention the Soviet Red Army as if someone else liberated those Jews from the concentration camp. So this should not be tolerated. It's a distortion of history. And the fact that there has been no outrage about Kaya Kala's ignorance or deliberate distortion of World War II history, whether from the European Commission or from European Parliament or major EU member state leaders, is itself shocking and outrageous to me. This is deeply worrying sign. Uh, I think we should remember history because we don't want to repeat that kind of history, and we don't want to repeat that horrible wars. But we have seen the NATO expansion posing threat to others. NATO even wants to expand to Asia, talking about coming to East Asia. Describing China's threat. It's a total lie. We have hundreds of U.S. 100, 200 U.S. military bases encircling China. I mean, you already mentioned some of it in the speech. And we have just heard the outrageous comments by U.S. President to take back the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan because he claimed it was built by the U.S. and it is only 1 hour from China's nuclear weapon facilities. I think there's such provocation and warmongering rhetoric, should alarm the whole world. And not to mention, his rhetoric on Venezuela, on Panama Canal, on many of the issues. Like many of you in the anti-war movement, I consider myself a pacifist, but I have increasingly been supportive of the Chinese government modernization of its defense. China has no interest in invading other nations. If China invaded Europe tomorrow, I will be the first one to come out to oppose it. It's good. China's good track record in the past 45 years is a proof. China has not been involved in any wars, has never dropped a bomb or fired a shot on foreign soil. No major country in the world can claim that same kind of good record. A China with a strong defense capability will not only prevent itself from being bullied again by those warmongering powers, like in our century of humiliation, when the Western power imposed many unequal treaties on China. And the days they could bully China, push China around, force China into unequal treaty, such as UK forcing open trade on China, forcing China to cede Hong Kong, or Japan forcing China to cede Taiwan, are long gone. A China with strong defense capability will be vital for world peace and for a multipolar world. And a just and multipolar world is one where developing countries from Asia to Africa to Latin America will no longer be bullied by Western powers. It's very important. I know a lot of Western politicians and media have tried very hard to portray China as a global threat, but it is only a reflection of their lack of knowledge of history or their deliberate distortion of history, just like Kaya Kallas. I would also add, lastly, the significance of today's meeting because it came at a time of the United Nations General Assembly, is meeting in New York City. China has always been a supporter of the international system with UN as the center. It's a sharp contrast to the views by the US, NATO, European Union, or G7, which regard themselves as representing the international community, where, you know, other countries in the developing world, in the global south, don't really count. I'll stop here. I will be happy to join the discussion later. Thank you very much.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.